That didn't take long. Less than 5 minutes.
Summer has most certainly passed by, and to be fair, autumn's not far behind. We're well into mid-November. Just like I'm sure a lot of you, I'm also thinking about how I'm going to keep those bites coming as the water temperatures start to drop. And I've come out really for my first sort of proper cold water session of the year. I've done a couple of blanks in a run up to this. Maybe I put too much bait in, maybe I didn't get my location right. But yeah, I'm really of the mindset now that I've got to slightly change my approach, change my baiting and stuff in order to keep those bites coming in the cold water. And I've got a few hours this morning to run through with you exactly how I go about doing that. If you're anything like me, I'm sure you'd much prefer a spring or summer's day or nights fishing. However, I love my carp fishing, and that means even when it gets freezing cold, I'm still out there doing it. As an angler, I need to change certain things going into these colder months. Maybe it's adding an extra layer to my sleep system, wrapping up warmer, shortening the sessions, picking the venue accordingly to try and keep the bites coming through the winter months. So yeah, I have to change things that I do. The carp's behaviour, that also changes. As the water temperatures cool down, they become more lethargic, they might group up together more tightly. They certainly won't be using the whole lake, moving around a lot. They could potentially go into bolt holes, dense reeds, dying weed beds or lily beds, deep in the snags. And yeah, you really need to pay as much attention in the colder months to where those fish are as you do at any time of the year really. I'll always endeavour to try and track them down. When I arrived late last night, I spent a good couple of hours walking around looking for them under the bright head torch, and after a lot of work and effort, I did manage to find them, and that's so important as it gets cold. Like I say, they're not going to be travelling here, there and everywhere, which means it's a lot harder for them to just sort of stumble across your sort of bait or your rig. As well as them becoming more lethargic, they're also likely to start losing some of their senses, their sense of taste, their sense of sight, and it's for that reason that as well as changing some of my angling approaches and tactics and tackling stuff, I also pay an awful lot more attention to my bait. In years gone by, I'll hold my hands up, I've definitely been guilty going into these colder months, still putting far too much bait in. In fact, those sort of sessions previously to this one, where I did blank, it was probably because I did overfeed the swim. So it's really important going into the winter that you're conscious that the fish, they simply can't digest and feed like they can in those warmer months. It's now that I'll switch pretty much everything over to utilising the citrus. I've been using it for years now. It's an incredible bait that's caught me a phenomenal amount of fish. It's really unique in the amount of flavour blends, vitamins, aminos that are packed into it, 35 in fact. It's very, very water soluble, and it does mean that, for example now, November, December, when the fish can still feed a little bit, it's very, very easily digestible for them. It's also bright in coloration, available in either the white or the pink form, and it's just super attractive. I'll often describe it as like a sweetie or a lure, and I know if I put the effort in prior to actually getting the rods out to track those carp down, even when they're super lethargic, even when they're bolted up tightly together, if I can get a citrus hook bait out into the vicinity of them, nothing's guaranteed, but more often than not, it will do you a few bites when all else will fail. There's a number of ways you can approach your bait and your rigs at this time of the year. Things don't change too much from the warmer months. Maybe I'll fine things down a little bit, potentially in hook size, leader materials. When the water clarity is really clear, I might jump onto a fluorocarbon leader, for example, instead of a Klingon leader. Hook bait size potentially as well. I'll drop down from maybe an 18, 15 to the 12 miller at this time of the year. As I said, those fish just don't want to feed. I did put a little bit of food out last night, but we're talking a real small quantity. I took a bucket, put some spod cloud in there, a little bit of liquidised bread, some citrus flake, some 2 mil citrus pellet, and just a few whole baits. But we're talking about feeding just very, very small handfuls on areas. You could also get away with a solid bag, for example, before the water temperatures plummet too much. That's a nice parcel of food there, everything's presented perfectly. But when it gets really, really cold, that's when I'll move over to the straight sort of lure approach. Those fish simply don't want to feed. I need something visual, I need something pumping out loads of flavour and attraction. I'll fish a single pop-up, heavily soaked in plume juice, maybe a citrus cultured pop-up, or potentially a little short zig, again pumping out attraction through the plume juice. The fish simply can't feed and digest the food, so there's very little point in actually throwing any in. The plume juice is a new addition to the citrus range, and A massive edge, there's no doubt about it. It's been tested now for a couple of years. We needed those 2 winters to really understand how to get the best out of it. And it heavily involves the use of the tangerine oil, a very, very classic old school flavour from Nash, and the same blends from within the citrus boilie itself. It's a clouding agent, so as well as pumping out additional attraction, it also will create a halo around that hook bait, and because of the tangerine oil, send plumes of attraction up through the layers to hopefully bring fish down to where your hook bait is positioned. To utilise the product, you can simply add doses to your pop-ups, give it a good shake, maybe leave it a week or so, add some more. You really can't over-flavour with it or overload your hook baits. And for sure, over the last few weeks leading up to this cold weather, I've been adding a few drops of plume juice every week to let that keep binding into the bait to give me maximum attraction on my hook baits. I also utilise the fizzing stick mix an awful lot. Tiny little sticks just attached onto a fang gyro rig or a bottom bait rig of some description. That'll create a huge amount of attraction in the swim with it fizzing and pinging off everywhere, again sending sort of attraction through the upper layers, hopefully pulling stuff down. To boost that further, of course, you could squirt a little bit of the plume juice on it too. And even in the solid bags, I'll punch to the side of the solid bag and give it a little squirt with the plume juice just to add that additional attraction. We've actually sold the plume juices for a number of years in the instant action range. More often than not, if I'm sloppy slodding, I'll use the coconut cream one, for example, but we've never done it in the citrus range. So I'm really excited going into these colder months with even further attraction on my hook bait or my small baited areas through the use of the plume juice. I'm sure there's a few more bites on the cards today. I'm going to go back down to the rods, get those choddies back on the opposite side, just put a very small amount of the citrus bottom baits around it, see if we can nick another bite or two here, have a coffee, and then I'm going to head off down the bottom end to an area that I put a little bit of bait on last night and try and nick one last bite before I head off for the day. It's nice to get another bite in the daytime. Haven't got much longer now, but I'm going to head up the other end. I've seen a couple of better fish up there and give it a final hour. See if we can end it with a slightly bigger one. So much fun. The best way of catching them, real up close and personal. We keep an eye on the spot, keeping just a very, very small handful of citrus going in every sort of hour. It's kept their interest there, and I really have ended the morning with a truly special one. It just goes to show, even when the water temperatures start to drop really, really cold, stay on your toes, find those carp, and use an appropriate bait, and you can still get plenty of bites. What a way to end. Really, really enjoyed my first sort of cold water session of the year, 7 bites. And yeah, I'm going to go into the winter months now, full of confidence, just like I have done in previous years. Not overbaiting, making sure I put the effort into tracking those fish down and using a bait that I have the utmost confidence in, and I know if I can find them, will get me bites. The incredible citrus. What a lovely carp to end on.